He doesn't carry grudges, he carries memories, sharp as glass. Mel Brooks never forgot the actor who blew a line, brushed off a note, or walked on set believing they were larger than the film itself. Once your name went into that ledger, it stayed there. Guts. You have such guts. Guts. For more than 6 decades, Mel Brooks built an empire out of madness. From Blazing Saddles to Young Frankenstein, he reshaped comedy with one guiding law: master the mayhem. Behind every wild performance lay precision, rhythm, and most of all, trust. When that trust broke, Brooks didn't rage, didn't explode. He erased you. The producers, Spaceballs, history of the world. Brooks wasn't just casting roles, he was an engineer. Actors were gears in something bigger, louder, faster. If one squeaked, he swapped it out mid-spin, higher and fire and higher. A ruthless cycle. Some players broke the rule, some dismissed it. Others never even knew it existed. But Mel remembered them all. The ones who wasted his time. The ones who believed they were sharper than the script. The ones who forgot they were visitors in a world he built from nothing. He's praised thousands of performers, but 5 names rise above the rest for all the wrong reasons. The ego wars, the silences after a scene, the firings that never made the headlines. 5 actors landed on Mel Brooks's blacklist forever. Number 1, Jerry Lewis. Brooks admired brilliance, but he had no patience for arrogance. In Jerry Lewis, he saw both geniuses wrapped in ego. And for Mel Brooks, that was never worth the fight. For years, the two were spoken of in the same breath. Architects of comedy, each building worlds from absurdity, each writing, directing, and starring in their own universes. Studios dreamed of pairing them up. It never happened. Behind closed doors, Brooks called Lewis brilliant but exhausting. He respected the Nutty Professor, admired its innovation, but never warmed to the man behind it. The final break came in the mid-1980s, during early talks for Life Stinks, a satire about a billionaire forced to live on the streets. When Lewis's name surfaced for a supporting role, the studio pitched it as prestige casting. Brooks refused without hesitation. "I don't need someone who thinks he's funnier than the movie," he reportedly told his producer. Lewis had a reputation, rewriting on set, arguing with directors, commanding every ounce of attention the moment he walked into a room. Brooks never shared control, not during filming, not in the editing room. The two met only once at a dinner arranged by a mutual friend. Brooks came curious, Lewis came late. He launched into a 15-minute speech about the future of American comedy, barely looking at Mel. Brooks listened, nodded, and left early. Later, when asked about it, he summed it up in one line: "I wanted a partner." He wanted applause. That dinner was the end of any possibility. In public, both stayed cordial. Brooks never mocked him, Lewis never mentioned him. But privately, everyone knew it wasn't a friendship that failed. It was a collaboration that never stood a chance. Brooks later explained his casting philosophy simply: "If someone believes they're the center of the universe, they can't exist in mine. I already have a son." That was the truth of it. Brooks built ensembles. He orchestrated chaos with precision, turned madness into music. He allowed stars to shine, but only those who understood that no star burns brighter than the whole constellation. Jerry Lewis couldn't. His ego left no room. Brooks once joked that hiring Lewis would have been a nuclear event. Not because of talent, but because of the fallout, constant rewrites, control battles, too loud, too much, too late. So there was never a script read, never an offer, never even a serious phone call, just a quiet decision made once and never revisited because even geniuses get locked out when they mistake the set for a mirror. And Mel Brooks didn't argue. He didn't shout. He just closed the door silently and for good. Number 2, Frank Langella. Some actors lose a role. Frank Langella lost the director. On paper, he was ideal. Mel Brooks was gearing up for Dracula, dead and loving it, and Langella had already worn the Count's cape on Broadway to great acclaim. Tall, elegant, magnetic. He seemed like the perfect choice. But that was the problem. He was Dracula, every inch of him. Brooks wasn't chasing gothic grandeur or tragic romance. He wanted absurdity, slapstick, a vampire who could brood with menace one second and trip over a coffin lid the next. Langella, though, came in as if he were performing Shakespeare, not spoofing it. From the first rehearsal, the rhythm faltered. The energy that usually filled a Brooks set, fast, electric, alive, fell flat. Langella refused to improvise or break his solemn tone. His performance was immaculate, untouchable, and utterly humorless. He wasn't Dracula. Brooks later said he was applying for sainthood. Brooks tried to pivot, soft notes, gentle direction, tweaks in timing, but nothing cracked the marble. Langella would nod, smile, and then deliver the same stone-faced performance again. Offstage, tension spread. Brooks thrived on momentum and laughter. Langella turned every moment into a cathedral pause. The cast began to lose confidence. Crew members whispered, "Is this a comedy or an opera?" Then came the moment that sealed his fate. During a table read, Brooks handed Langella a new line, a setup that ended in a classic Brooks pratfall. Langella froze, looked up, and asked, "Perfectly serious, do you want me to mock the script?" Brooks paused, leaned forward, and replied, "No, I want you to survive it." By week's end, Langella was gone. No arguments, no headlines, just a quiet replacement. Lizzie Nielsen. Nielsen was everything Brooks had been waiting for. A master of deadpan chaos, able to stand in the middle of absurdity and never flinch. He didn't resist the madness. He channeled it. Brooks didn't. Need nobility. He needed rhythm, control inside the storm. And Nielsen delivered exactly that. Langella didn't. The official explanation was creative differences, but everyone on set knew better. Brooks wasn't about to drag a Shakespearean statue into a farce. He needed someone who felt the joke before it landed, who wanted to tumble into the absurd. Langella couldn't. He left quietly and never mentioned the film again. Brooks never insulted him, never mocked him in public. But whenever Dracula, dead and loving it, came up, Brooks had only one word for Nielsen: perfect. Langella's name was never spoken. In Brooks's universe, there were two kinds of actors: those who lifted the madness higher and those crushed beneath its weight. Langella entered wearing a crown, but Brooks wasn't building a throne. He was conducting chaos, and the only way to survive was to love the fall. Number 3, Chevy Chase. Mel Brooks had a sixth sense for energy. Before the first rehearsal, before the first line, he could feel it whether someone belonged or not. With Chevy Chase, the answer came instantly. No, they never worked together, not once. And that was no accident. Through the 80s and early 90s, studios kept floating Chevy's name, hoping to pair two comedy titans. Brooks, the master of mayhem; Chase, the golden boy of deadpan. On paper, it made sense. Chase had the fame, the face, the box office pull. Yet every time, Brooks refused. The reason was simple. Chevy Chase violated the first law of Mel Brooks's world: collaboration. Brooks didn't have to see it firsthand. He'd heard the stories, late-night talk shows, whispers from friends, tales from sets left bruised by sarcasm. Chase was lightning fast, razor sharp, and could command a room with wit alone. But where he went, tension followed. Brooks once told the casting director, "He's not performing. He's just waiting for everyone else to stop talking so he can prove he's the smartest guy here." But Brooks wasn't looking for the smartest guy in the room. He was looking for someone who shared the room, someone who could land a laugh, then pass the rhythm forward. Chevy never played that way. The closest their paths ever came to crossing was during Spaceballs. Studios suggested Chase for the role of Dark Helmet. He had the dryness, the timing, the smirk. Brooks didn't hesitate. No, he already knew who he wanted: Rick Moranis. "Rick knows when to step back," Brooks later said. "Chevy only knows how to interrupt." For Brooks, chemistry was everything. Timing was holy, ego wasn't. And Chevy Chase, for all his brilliance, carried too much of the latter. Brookie saw him as someone who invaded comedy rather than joined it, always pushing in, never flowing with the scene. He respected the talent, yes, but the attitude never. Chase's brand of comedy always seemed detached, watching the joke from a safe distance, smirking as if he were above it all. Brooks couldn't stand that comedy in his eyes wasn't about cynicism. It was about conviction. You had to believe in the madness. Chevy didn't. They reportedly met once briefly. The conversation was awkward, short, and forgettable. Brooks smiled, shook his hand, and ended with a single line: "Maybe in another universe." That universe never came. Later, when Brooks was asked about difficult actors, he kept things vague. "Some performers," he said, "are so self-aware they forget to be there. You can see them thinking about themselves instead of the scene." When someone mentioned Chase's name, Brooks only grinned and moved on because for him, comedy was a trust exercise. You jump, I catch you. You fall, I fall with you. Chevy Chase didn't trust anyone. He wielded silence like a smirk, punchlines like weapons. Every exchange became a duel. Brooks wasn't searching for duels. He was searching for rhythm, for harmony and chaos. In the end, Chevy Chase wasn't blacklisted. He was simply left out. Not because he wasn't funny, but because he couldn't share the laughter. Brooks adored misfits, but not egos pretending to be confident. And that's why in Mel Brooks's universe, Chevy Chase was never part of the act. Number 4, Gene Wilder. Some betrayals come from strangers. Mel Brooks's deepest one came from someone he loved, like family. Gene Wilder wasn't just an actor to Brooks. He was his mirror, his rhythm, his madness, his twin. Together, they didn't just make comedies, they reinvented them. The producers, Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, each one a revolution, lightning bottled and shaken until it exploded on screen. But after Young Frankenstein, something shifted. Much of that film's soul came from Wilder's pen. Yet, it was Brooks who directed it, fought the studio to keep it in black and white, and stitched the chaos into perfection. The result was magic. Too perfect, maybe. Because when the curtain fell, the cracks appeared. Wilder had another story ready. The adventure of Sherlock Holmes's smarter brother. He'd written it, planned to star in it, and wanted Brooks to produce. But Brooks said no, not because it lacked heart, but because he didn't think Gene was ready to direct. Gene thought he was. Brooks knew he wasn't. That single divide split their partnership clean down the middle. For Wilder, it felt like betrayal. He expected loyalty, a friend who'd back him no matter what. For Brooks, it was protection, a refusal to let someone he loved crash before his eyes. But Gene went ahead anyway. He made the film, bringing along Marty Feldman and Malin Khan, familiar faces from their shared past. And yet, the rhythm was off. The laughter had an echo. The magic didn't come back. What cracked on set lingered afterward. They didn't fight. They didn't insult each other. They just stopped. No calls, no collaborations, just silence, heavy and personal. Brooks once confided to a friend, "It was like watching your brother pack up and leave home. Only he took your best joke with him." Years later, they met again by chance at an event. No dramatic reunion, no tears, just a handshake, a few warm laughs, and the quiet understanding that the storm had passed, but the sky would never look the same. They never worked together again, not from anger, but from sadness. Brooks would later admit Gene was the only performer he ever trusted with a half-written idea, someone who could take a fragment and find its heartbeat. He always knew where the punchline was hiding, Brooks once said. But after Smarter Brother, something fundamental was gone. Wilder had stepped outside the circle, and in Brooks's world, you only got to do that once. Publicly, they stayed gracious, even affectionate. Privately, Brooks kept the wound to himself. Because the hardest break doesn't come from enemies. It comes from the one who knows you best, the one who knows exactly where to pull the thread. Number 5, Harvey Corman. On screen, Harvey Corman was pure gold. Mel Brooks trusted him with some of the biggest laughs of his career, and Corman always delivered. Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety, History of the World, Part 1. He could twist a line until it snapped, hold a ridiculous face until the audience broke, then collapse the whole thing into glorious chaos. But off camera, the energy was different. Brooks rarely talked about it, but tension simmered beneath the laughter. Corman came from the Carol Burnett Show, where comedy was built on looseness, sketches, improvisation, the kind of freedom that let actors bend the moment to their will. Brooks's sets were the opposite. He ran them like an orchestra. Every beat counted, every pause mattered. One wrong rhythm and the joke fell apart. Corman, for all his brilliance, had a habit of drifting. Their clash reached its peak during High Anxiety. Brooks cast Corman as Dr. Montague, the cold, calculating head of the Psychoneurotic Institute for the very, very nervous. Corman wanted to reshape him completely, add quirks, tweak lines, even rewrite scenes. Brooks cut him off. "The funny parts are already written. All we need is for you to do it." Corman didn't take that well. The tension crept into every day of filming. He questioned direction, argued over blocking, paused between takes to suggest alternatives. Brooks, normally the most collaborative man on set, started to withdraw. What had begun as a lively production turned into a quiet duel of wills. Crew members later called it the polite war. They never shouted, never made a scene, but every exchange became a test of control. Halfway through the shoot, Brooks told a producer, "Harvey wants to be the director, but the jobs are already filled." By the end of filming, they were barely speaking. Brooks sent notes through assistants. Corman kept to himself between takes. The same chemistry that once made Blazing Saddles ignite now felt brittle, worn thin. Still, Corman's performance is shown on screen. He was flawless, sharp, funny, and alive. But Brooks never forgot what it took to get there. After High Anxiety, Corman's name quietly disappeared from future Brooks projects, not because of anger, but because of fatigue. As Brooks put it later, some actors bring joy to the set. Harvey brought brilliance, but always with a fight. There was no feud, no fallout, just an unspoken truth. Their run had ended. Corman stayed proud of the films they made, speaking kindly of Brooks for years. And Brooks, for his part, never denied Corman's genius or his impact. They simply moved on. Because for Brooks, comedy depended on rhythm, shared rhythm. He could command chaos, handle egos, even steer madness. But once partnership turned into competition, the laughter changed shape. It stopped being played and started feeling like battle. Brooks never wanted to win. He wanted to make people laugh. And when the laughter started costing more than a joke itself, he knew it was time to walk away. Some actors were cut loose for lack of talent, but not these 5. Each of them had brilliance to spare. What they lacked wasn't skill, but trust, rhythm, humility, or simply the ability to share the spotlight. In Mel Brooks's world, that was enough to end everything. Once you lost his trust, there were no second chances. You weren't just out of the role, you were erased from the story. So the question remains, who almost made the list or who should have? Every studio veteran has a theory, every insider a rumor. But one thing's certain, Brooks never forgot. His memory was sharper than any grudge. If you've got a guess, drop it in the comments below. And if you want early access to the next Hollywood Blacklist, hit like, subscribe, and join the channel for exclusive breakdowns. Because in Mel Brooks's universe, landing a part was never the reward. Keeping it, that was the real test.